What do you think happens? I know we're coming up on our hour here, so I want to get these two bigger 30,000-foot questions in. What do you think happens when the Fed legalizes it across the country? Do you, do you think that's going to happen? When do you think that might happen? And when it does it wipe out all the small people and, Pfizer takes over the marijuana industry? What do you think happens?
I then have to ask you, how does it happen? So, I mean, there are a couple of things, right? So Schedule 3, HHS memo, DEA does something, comment period, listening to all the smart people, probably a couple years. What does that mean? It means 280E goes away. That's wonderful. If the exchanges and FinCEN read it right, maybe there could be some guidance for uplisting. That could bring in capital market stuff. I believe that does, now that it would be Schedule 3, offer bankruptcy protection. That may, stimulate some stuff, but it doesn't mean there's cross-border transactions. It doesn't mean that necessarily that could happen through courts. My understanding, obviously, I spent so many years in law school and all of this, but so there's that. There's the Boy Schiller case that Ascend Wellness and I think Verano and maybe GTI, I'm not sure, are helping fund. And that's effectively the firm, my understanding is they're making an identical case or a similar case that they used when they did the gay rights thing in California, that they did most recently with DraftKings, effectively stating that by the very definition that if there is a state legal and regulated market in something, the federal government has to be hands off because of the 10th Amendment. So what that would mean is in any state where there was a legal regulated market, cannabis would not be on the CSA. It doesn't mean that cannabis is in Schedule 1. It just means hands off, which would then 280E goes away, all of that stuff, because it's just not that thing in that state. What's interesting, there's a Jefferson Packing House case out west, and I believe there's a case in New York. What could be interesting is a 10th Amendment case against a cross-border neighboring state interstate commerce. And that's where Massachusetts, when talking about the testing standards, could be kind of interesting, because if Massachusetts is having the highest testing standards, although we couldn't say, California, you're not allowed to ship weed in, we could say it has to be tested to our standards, which most would fail. So we would be a net exporter, at least early on. But with any of these things, and you talked about what our plans are to sell this, that, this ties in the two. It brings me back to a quote from my trading days. Liquidity isn't where you get in and out where you want to. It's where you can get in and out when you have to. Right now, there's a ton of distress on the market. There's a lack of money to buy it up. There's no liquidity. So, I mean, what are you going to hit bids at one-time revenue, maybe, and get smoked? And mass with the Cannabis Control Commission, I mean, the change of controls and all of that and the background checks takes forever. So I sort of view this, again, going back to trading in so there were times, and I was a lot of times contra trend. So something's tanking, I'm going to find the bottom. And a lot of times when that happens, or something's going up parabolic, and I'm going to try to find the top. Well, an exchange or company could choose to halt the stock for whatever reason. So a lot of times I can get stuck and there's nothing you could do. So I could be long a block, you could be short a block. Even if we're sitting next to each other, we can't just cross it out. You have to trade it out. So the way I look at this is sort of like, okay, I'm stuck in a halt. I could be mad. I could be down 50%. I could be all these things, but that stock's about to open up in 2 minutes and I have to make a decision, right? So I try to evaluate, what would I do if I were flat? What would I do if I didn't have a position? So if I'm long, if I own something, and if I now, even though I may have just gotten smoked, if I want to buy it down here, I'm definitely not selling, and hopefully can find the capital to buy more. If maybe I'm just not interested here, then I'm not doing anything, maybe trying to sell a little bit. And certainly if I want to be the other way, then even at that loss, I'm still trying to get out. And I sort of view the industry like, okay, we're stuck in a halt. So now what do we do? And the answer, you have the magic 8-ball, seems to be refine processes, build value, be open to opportunities, but don't spread yourself too thin.